Adrian Wojnarowski, NBA writer for Yahoo Sports. Woj, you wrote earlier this morning about the situation in Oklahoma City where it doesn't seem like there are any guarantees that Scott Brooks is going to be back. Is this about what the team thinks of Scott Brooks coaching, or is it they maybe don't want to give him an extension on a deal that has 1 year left on the contract?
Chris, I don't think an extension is the issue here. I mean, remember in 2012 when they went to the finals, Brooks was in the last year of his deal. I think that's pretty overrated in sports anyway. People know whether you're a coach with 1 year left on his deal or 4 years left on his deal, you can get fired. I think it's an overrated concept that a guy can't be in the last year of his deal and coach, especially because players know a coach can go at any time. They've got to make a decision. Sam Presti and ownership there, what they're going to ultimately look at in Oklahoma City is going forward, is he our best chance to win a championship with? And I don't think it's about this season and he should have gotten more. I don't think it's what he did with a makeshift team in Oklahoma City this year. I don't think anybody there's blaming him for not making the playoffs. My sense is just they've got to make a decision. Can we win a championship with Scott Brooks? Is there somebody else out there that can help us reach that goal? They haven't made a decision, but they're going to look at it. They're not going to come out, I don't believe, here in the next day or two and say, hey, 100% Scott Brooks is back next year. They're going to take time to examine this, and that's something I'm not sure that they've done in other seasons. I think that he was coming back in any other season. This year, I'm told it's different.
You floated the possibility that if Scott Brooks is let go, Billy Donovan could be on the radar for Sam Presti, citing the relationship that Sam has with Billy. My question when I read that is, how big a risk is it for a team going into a massively important year next year with Kevin Durant's contract coming up at the end of it? How big a risk is it to bring in a college coach without NBA experience in that type of situation?
Chris, it would be a tremendous risk to hire a college coach in a year where it's really important to try to make a championship run. Kevin Durant's walk year in Oklahoma City. Sam Presti and Donovan have a long relationship. Presti, in fact, hired one of Billy Donovan's assistant coaches to coach Oklahoma City's D-League team. One of his recent scouting hires came from Billy Donovan's staff. There's certainly a strong relationship there. A lot of it, there's significant interest around the NBA in Donovan. There was last year. Cleveland went hard after him. Minnesota had interest in him, and there's going to be interest again here with the openings that are there now and yet to open. And Donovan continues to be intrigued with the NBA. But if they did make a change in Oklahoma City, I think obviously Sam Presti would have to look at the availability of a Tom Thibodeau, a Jeff Van Gundy. You have to look at guys like that, experienced, proven, winning NBA head coaches. But Billy Donovan would be in that mix, and he would be a candidate in Oklahoma City. And if you're Billy Donovan, there's no better pro opportunity available to you than Oklahoma City. And so on his end, that's something I know he'd have great interest in.
What's the perception of working for Oklahoma City? Because my kind of read of the landscape is that, look, Presti's reputation speaks for itself as a talent evaluator, but he seems kind of hands-on in some ways with, this is the plan we're doing. We're going to follow this. We're going to, I'm going to architect this way, and we have to follow it. Does it make it difficult in some ways to maybe bring a coach in with a bigger personality who might not be as accepting to a certain overall team philosophy?
Chris, you know how it has trended in the NBA here in recent years. It's gone away from the all-powerful individual. Now, Stan Van Gundy got Detroit, but more and more you see less of the Doc Rivers, Greg Popovich, where there's one person with ultimate control. There's a few elite coaches who can have that. For the rest of the league, it's you've got to work with management on roster, on style of play to make it work. And some organizations have been more successful in that. Daryl Morey in Houston is hands-on in that way, and they're going to play a style of play, and you're going to have assistant coaches that with certain expertise that they want in there and a roster built to play a certain way. And they won 56 games with that in Houston, and it's worked for them in Houston. And certainly it's worked in Oklahoma City, but there's no question Sam's going to be hands-on in the sense of personnel, how they'd like to use people. But they've had great success. There's probably been he and Troy Weaver, you go back through the last, through drafts, through the deals they've made. I know there'll be criticism of the James Harden deal. Every organization, no one bats 1,000, but they've done a better job than I think comparable only to San Antonio in terms of drafting, player development. Listen, Scott Brooks has been a big part of that. And as I wrote in the story, if Scott Brooks were to be free, he'd be at the top of a lot of teams' lists, including Denver, including Orlando. He'd work again in 5 minutes. But I think here the decision is, can we make that next step with Scott Brooks? That's what they're going to look at here in Oklahoma City. And the answer may be yes, and let's bring him back. But that's something they're going to explore now, and I think it's going to take some time.
He's Adrian Wojnarowski, NBA writer, Yahoo Sports, joining us here at Dan Patrick Show. You tweeted something interesting last night, Woj, after the Pelicans win, that there was a mandate from ownership to Dell Demps and Monty Williams to get into the playoffs, no excuses. Is it your opinion that if they had lost that game, that they might have lost their jobs?
I don't know if they would have held to it, and it's funny. When I heard that early in the season, I wondered, what if they have a season like the Suns had last year, where they got down, where they went from, made a tremendous leap, got to the cusp and missed out on the playoffs in the last day or two. Well, that's how it could have played out for New Orleans. Now, I think we'd all agree it'd be pretty short-sighted to make a decision based on one game. You're looking at a far bigger picture than whether you could beat the Spurs or not on the final game of the season. I would have to imagine that they're all going to be back now, but there's no question that jobs are on the line this year there. Only the Pelicans management ownership knows whether they would have held to that, when it came down to the wire like that. But they were management and front office and Monty Williams and his staff were under tremendous pressure this year to do what they did. And you got to give them a lot of credit for getting this group into the playoffs. And listen, with a healthy Oklahoma City team back next year, there's no guarantees that team gets in next year. I mean, what teams are they going to leap over in the West? So they were fortunate. There were some injuries ahead of them, but hey, they had some injuries too. You got to give Monty Williams a lot of credit. I think he held that group together, and there's a lot of criticism of him around the league, but so much of that job is getting your guys to play for you, and Monty Williams did that.
Before I let you go, a couple of coaching openings we know are going to be there. Denver, likely not to retain Melvin Hunt. James Borrego in Orlando, he's likely not to be back either. Any indications yet on what direction those two teams might go?
Well, I know Denver's going to consider Melvin Hunt. I think he's going to be part of the process. I'm not sure James Borrego has. I think Orlando is absolutely going to hire somebody from the outside. I think very well in Orlando they may wait on Tom Thibodeau and see how this plays out in Chicago. And as I mentioned, if Scott Brooks were to become available, Rob Hennigan, the general manager in Orlando, worked with Scotty Brooks in Oklahoma City. And I think Brooks would be perfect for that young team in Orlando. Not as talented, but kind of reminds you a little bit of the very beginning in Oklahoma City and how he grew that team. I know that Brooks would be at the top of the list, not only in Orlando, but Denver, if he were to become available.
Good to visit with you, Woj. Appreciate the time.
Chris, talk to you soon, man.
That's Adrian Wojnarowski, NBA writer, Yahoo Sports.